So the option chain. I've shown this a few times, and we'll kind of go through different kind of areas of this and things to kind of pay attention to within the option chain, and just the basic understanding of how it works. So once again, you've seen this image a few times now. So this is the option chain. So let's kind of dive into the different elements of this and what you should sort of focus on. So strike price. So strike price is the price that the underlying asset can be purchased at if the option contract is exercised before expiration. That's sort of a mouthful, but strike price is determined at the time of purchase or when the option contract is written. So we'll go and take a look at the chain itself again here, and I'll kind of just walk through kind of what that means. Now, in our example again, we're looking at Apple. So at the time of this screenshot, Apple was trading at 219.31, and if I were wanting to say buy options, so I'd be looking at the left side over here with all the calls. Well, actually, so let me restate that. So if I were wanting to do a just straight up purchase of an option, a call or a put, but I was wanting to do something to the upside, I would be looking at the call side of things. And typically if you're buying options, just a quick crash course on buying options just outright, more times than not, you're wanting to buy in the money. So in the money is basically anything that is already below the current price for a call. So currently, like I said, price is 219.31. So anything below 219.31 would be in the money. So basically, price is already higher, and those options are going to have more intrinsic value, which we'll kind of touch on more. It's very implied what that is, but so this is the option chain, and hopefully that makes sense with strike prices. So basically what it's saying is you're buying a contract that at the time, you'd be buying the 205s hypothetically. So that would be roughly like a delta 70 or delta 60. And those options already have intrinsic value because price is already 4 points ahead of that, or excuse me, 14 points ahead of that. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. So next, and I kind of mentioned this already, at the money. An at the money contract is when the strike price is at the current spot price of the underlying asset. So in the example I just gave, Apple was trading at 219, I believe, what was it, 219.31? Yeah, there we go. And so basically you would be buying the strike closest to that, so 220 in this case. So the at the money option will have a delta around 50. This rating indicates that there is basically a 50% chance that the strike will end up in the money. Basically also what delta is sort of showing you, we're not really going to deep into the Greeks in this, but basically delta is a representation of, for each 1 point that the underlying asset moves, it's going to move half a point. Or the value of the option, excuse me, will kind of increase by 0.5%. So an at the money option will have no intrinsic value, so only extrinsic value. So getting back to implied volatility, when an option, or when you're looking at buying or selling options, if you're looking at the money option and there's not many days left for expiration, but the options are super expensive still, that's probably a good opportunity to sell options because there's so much extrinsic, they're so overpriced basically, and there's no inherent or intrinsic value. So let's look at this. So, like I just mentioned in the example of Apple, you have the 219.31, which is our current price. So the closest to that would be the 220. So those are the at the money strike in the call and the at the money on the put side as well. Does this all make sense? I mean, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And you'll see kind of next there's a few other terms that kind of go along with this. So, I mentioned just a moment ago the delta. So the way you can see that here in the option chain is up at the top, and this is Thinkorswim. So if you, if you're kind of wondering what platform, this is the platform I use. So right here, this is kind of a drop-down menu where you can change between things like open interest and then the Greeks. So if you change it to this layout, you'll get the Greeks here. And like I said, the at the money strike is going to be right around a 50 delta. And delta is obviously right here. The next slide. will be once again showing you at the top. You can change the layout structure, and this will just show you kind of the intrinsic and extrinsic value of the option. So like I mentioned, the at the money strike is not going to have any intrinsic value, but as I mentioned just a moment ago, if you're buying options, whether that's a call or a put, typically more times than not, you want to be buying in the money if you're just buying straight out, an option or excuse me, a call or a put. So you can see right here, the first in the strike, in the money option, excuse me, in the money strike has $1.51 of intrinsic value, but it has a ton of extrinsic value. So, $6.11. So the next term is going to be in the money. So we've touched on this already a little bit, so it should be pretty easy to kind of grasp this at this point. So an in the money option, it means that the contract was closed or exercised, it would be profitable at that time. And in the money option will have a delta of above 50. For example, a delta of 70 would be in the money. It would mean there was a 70% chance the option would be profitable at expiration. And in the money option has intrinsic value. So unlike the at the money, these options are already below, in the case of a call, below the existing price. And the opposite for a put. So if you're buying in the money put options, in the case with Apple at 219.31, you would be buying something like a 225 put, and that would be in the money. So just taking a look at that. So basically in Thinkorswim, you can see in the money is always going to be the highlighted area on both the call and the put side of things. Does this all make sense? Yeah, okay, good. Great. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's really, like I said, I mean, you shouldn't be overwhelmed by this stuff. It's just kind of getting past the idea that this stuff is supposed to be super complicated. And I think once you kind of just get in and look, it's really not that bad. I mean, it's just really like anything. You kind of have to learn the lingo, and from there, it just gets a lot easier. And once again, just kind of showing you, delta, so a delta 55, so that's barely in the money, and really going up from there, you see the delta increases. So, a 91 delta is basically saying that with, every one move, you're basically getting 91 cents. So nearly a 1-to-1. All right, and so basically the opposite of this, out of the money. An options contract that is out of the money means that if the contract was closed or exercised, it would not be profitable. Out of the money options will have a delta below 50. For example, a delta 40 would be out of the money. So very much, I think at this point going through all three, you should sort of understand how these all work. And we'll kind of look at this real quick in the option chain, but very similar to before. It's really just anything that is not in the shaded area. So once again with our 219.31 example, if you're buying out of the money options, so for a call you'd be buying anything below 219.31, or excuse me, above 219.31. So we have not yet got above 220. That's the out the money. So 222.50, that is an out of the money option. I know it's a little confusing because technically the 220 is out of the money as well, but it's basically your middle line, so it's referred to as at the money. So does that all make sense? And you can see on the put side, it would be the opposite. So price is not yet below these, so these would be out of the money. So your 215, that's your first out of the money strike. Very, like I said, I think once you kind of get in the understanding of what you're talking about here, it kind of all falls into place.